After going on a 3-game winning streak, the Chicago Bulls have responded with a 3-game losing streak, showing the back-and-forth nature that has held this team over the last few years. And with now back-to-back 20-point losses at home, I think the Chicago Bulls are giving the answers to Bulls fans asking on what the direction of the team should be. We're going to talk about it all and more, plus the Suns' interest in Nikola Vucevic and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And yeah, that loss yesterday to the Atlanta Hawks sucked with the Chicago Bulls. After being up initially 17 points in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes and 30 seconds remaining, the Chicago Bulls ended up losing the game by over 20 points, and it was a historic collapse, allowing 50 points in the fourth quarter of that game. And it just reminded, yes, the Bulls were down players. We were missing Josh Giddey, Lonzo Ball, Modest Bucilis, Ayo Dosunmu, all players that play a nice amount of minutes for the Chicago Bulls. So there is that. The refereeing and officiating in that game, especially down the stretch, when you look at how many free throws that the Atlanta Hawks got compared to the Chicago Bulls, yes, there was a huge discrepancy there. And I would give more or probably put a larger part of the blame on that if it wasn't for the fact that seeing this Bulls team, you saw you just saw the fight leave out their eyes, right? And this is a team that when they were rocking and rolling and playing with that confidence, Zach LaVine in that third quarter going off in the way that he did, he was yapping at the Atlanta Hawks, talking shit, and that just all went away as the course of the game went on. This team just does not have confidence because this team doesn't believe in itself, right? And, you know, it's been a season of going back and forth, like a lot of Bulls fans thinking, oh, no, we should not be trading players like Zach and Vooch, and we should be trying to add to the team. We, you know, even so much so as some fans saying that the Bulls can be the 5th seed or the 6th seed. Like, and I've been pretty consistent. This team is bad, right? This team is bad defensively, and as bad as they are defensively, it really is going to hurt this team no matter how good their offense can be. And the Bulls offense is still that button-mashing offense that I talked about. That we have no half-court sets. We run no half-court actions. We don't run off-ball actions in the half-court. Right now, the way that the Chicago Bulls are thriving offensively is mainly just when their shots are falling and because they move with such a quick pace. But anytime this Bulls team needs to double down defensively, it's just not there, right? And we continue to see that from this Bulls team. This is a team that's going to struggle. This is a team that's going to struggle to get wins because of their inconsistencies in so many things that are, you know, foundations of the game. You know, we have no half-court offense. I get it that, you know, offense is changing. More three-pointers are being shot. But when you look at the teams that are the better teams in the league, when they're forced into half-court sets, they have something. The Bulls have nothing in the half-court. Coaching by the Chicago Bulls. Billy Donovan did not stop the bleeding. He didn't even attempt to call a timeout. Now, some people have said, and I've seen it, oh, well, this is a elite tanking measure by Billy Donovan. And if you know anything about Billy is not the type of coach that's going to tank. Like, I just refuse to believe that. This is just Billy Donovan's own stupidity of not understanding my team is out there getting killed right now on pace to give up 50 points. Let me call a timeout to at least calm some things down, get players on the right page. But the problem with that is, too, the point of calling a timeout is to then put in some actions or some sets. And we don't do that. We just don't do that. And I know this is kind of high level basketball talk, right? For most basketball fans, they're not looking at it to see what type of sets or actions we're running. They're just seeing, hey, do the Bulls look like they're running a play? Does the ball go in? Right? Did we get a defensive stop or did the other team kill us? Right? And that's what people are looking at. But like, if you for those that break down the game of basketball and really like to look at the ins and outs, the X's and O's, you'll see that this team ain't running shit. We don't run anything, right? And honestly, the way where the Bulls sit right now in the standings is actually a testament to just how bad some defense is in the league, or how, like, with the fact that the Bulls don't have any of those half-court sets, and we're still 13-18 on the season, a 41 win percentage, right? And so it's so back and forth, and this team continues to be that team that just goes back and forth. Every time something good happens for the team, like a 3-game winning streak, a 3-game losing streak follows it. Or hell, it could even be longer than that when we face Milwaukee Bucks at home. Again, it's bad, right? It's bad. So, the Chicago Bulls just continue to just show and prove who they are. And for my optimistic Bulls fans that are still holding out hope that this team may not even need to technically tank to hold on to their pick. They just seriously may not, because teams around this league are improving. Teams around the league are improving. The Detroit Pistons are on a 3-game winning streak. The Philadelphia 76ers have won 7 out of their last 10, right? That's where the Bulls now sit only a half a game above the Philadelphia 76ers, and we know how rough the season started for the 76ers. It did the 76ers won 3 games by the end of November. And now they sit only a half game behind the Chicago Bulls. That's where things stand at for this team. And I think that, I think that the Bulls have adamantly answered the question that a lot of Bulls fans have. I just think that a lot of fans aren't listening to the answers. You aren't believing what this team is showing you. This team is not good enough to do anything substantial on a run, right? And I was in a conversation with Eco Bean, who, and this isn't a slight, shout out to Eco. He's a smart basketball fan. He just has his thoughts, right? And he talked about oh, well, you don't technically want to tank for one player because you want to double down. He even compared it to the Boston Celtics. And I rebutted with this. The Boston Celtics, right? The reason why they were in a place to be able to draft Jason Tatum, to draft Jaylen Brown, right, is that, yes, they have veterans on this team and they had to make moves for veterans, but they moved off KG and Paul Pierce, and they were able to get a bevy of picks back for players that they clearly weren't going to go on a run with anymore. And that's where this Bulls team said, and they're not going to get much. Comparing it to KG and Paul Pierce is a little bit down, is a way overstatement, because at least that team won a title together. But that's what you have to be if you want to be a team that has a future. You have to know when and where to move off players, right? And this team has shown us. If the last 4 years weren't indicative enough, the Bulls are on pace to yet again have another to win less games than they did the year prior for the 4th year in a row, right? And that's not a team that you sit there and you say, this is a team that's right there, right? Where some Bulls fans have it. Now, yes, you were missing 4 players last night, but let's not forget, we just lost to the Milwaukee Bucks a couple of days ago without Dame and without Giannis, right? And again, there are fluke losses for every team over the course of the season. But unfortunately, when you look at the Bulls, how they play, that's not a fluke loss. How many games over the last few years have we seen that that teams have been missing players and the Bulls couldn't capitalize on that? How many times have we seen that? Because if you're being honest with yourself, you've seen it a lot. You've seen it a lot. This team right now, surprisingly enough, would have the 10th pick. Well, without the lottery, before the lottery, right? That's where this team is. That's the realistic place that this team is. This team is not that far off from keeping their pick. So when you hear things like, oh, well, why would we move Zach? Why would we move Vooch? Why would we move Lonzo? Because guess what? We're not anywhere close to doing anything meaningful with those guys at all. And by at all, I literally mean at all. And when I'm somebody that I lean on the side, when people show you who they are, you believe them. And this Bulls team has shown us who they are. This is not a team that's going to magically go on some run. This is not a team that's going to magically be able to they're going to win some games. And they're going to have some more winning streaks over this time, over the course of the season. They absolutely are. But this is a team that's largely disappointing because not only is the roster construction weird, right? Because it is. Because we're missing some key things that this team needs, that players on this team need to be successful. But our coaching, situational awareness by Billy Donovan is severely lacking a lot of times, right? And then also the defense, the half court, it's not just the defense is terrible, right? And a lot of Bulls fans at the beginning of the season made the comparison from the Pacers last year, saying, well, look at the Pacers. They were so good offensively last year, but terrible defensively. Look how far they were able to make it. The difference is that the Pacers weren't just good offensively. They were elite offensively, even in the half court. So it's not just the fact that the Bulls suck defensively. It's also that if they face off against any type of team that makes the right defensive adjustments, we have no half-court offense to default to. None. At all. Zip. Zero. Zilch. We don't protect the paint on defense. We don't have good perimeter defense, which is what really where the point of attack starts at, which allows points in the paint. The Bulls have none of that. We have none of it. We yet again, once again, have no identity. There's a little bit more because we do have the pace thing that we go with, and we shoot such a good percentage from 3-point, even though that's dropped off for the Bulls. They went from in the top 5 to, in the top 15, right? So, that's something that comes down to, but what the margin of error for the Bulls is so small that's what leads you to this place where this team just can't get it done at a high enough or consistent enough level to where they can legitimately try to win anything. So the Bulls sit in this place, right, where they're not a free agent destination. We never have been. You don't really have the assets to make a trade for a big name player, even if they became available, because we've given up so much, right? And there's so much of our assets that are protected. And so you don't have that, right? And so when you don't have the ability to forward move, unless somebody just wakes up one day and Jimmy Butler says, you know what, I want to go back to Chicago. I want to finish my career in Chicago where I started at. Even then, I don't think that really ups your ceiling a little bit too much. I think then at that point you are fighting for a playoff spot. But, again, the longevity of it, right? So the Bulls aren't in the place where they're all of a sudden going to be some team that we're just one move away from being one move away. No, we're not that, right? And you have to eventually either you can choose the path or it's chosen for you. You either choose to take a step back for a little while so you can gain assets, develop, draft young pieces, that promising pieces that you hopefully can develop into something. No, it's not a surefire 100% thing. It's not, but that's the hope, right? Or you sit around the middle of the pack for the next 3 or 4 years, which you've already been there for 3 or 4 years. So then at that point, you're looking at almost a decade of sitting in the middle, and where does that get you? Nowhere. And even in making the comparison, again, to go back to my conversation with Eco Beam, he made the comparison to, well, the Bulls drafted well for years, and then it took us to get Derrick Rose to really, yeah, but you know what that team did? That team made it made the playoffs 14 times out of 19 years. I think it was something like that. No, it was 12 times out of 15. Either way, they made the playoffs more than they missed, right? And that was a team that was actually fighting. It's a very different task when you're a young team and you're competing for the playoffs and making the playoffs. Yeah, you may get eliminated in the first round. That team swept the defending defending champion Miami Heat, right? You may be able to do some of those things, but yeah, of course, you're waiting for a player to develop or push you over the top at that point. But at least you're progressing. The place where the Bulls are right now is that they have an older roster. Some of your biggest pieces on this roster are older, and you're still in the middle of the pack, and you're not really developing. You're not really progressing, right? It's a very different thing to be young and being in the play-in or being in the middle of the pack between being old and being in the middle of the pack. That's a very different thing. And even if you're looking at not just the age, look at it. Most of our core players have been in the league 4 or 5 years. Those aren't baby Bulls at that point in time. Yes, Ayo and Kobe are still very young players, but they've been in the league 4 and 5 years. So it is what it is. And shout out to Kobe White for having a bounce back game last night. The 23 points on 13 shots, really good. 9 assists, really good there from Kobe White. And hopefully he can continue to progress there. Zach LaVine, an amazing game from him last night. But it still comes down to it's not getting done, right? And the Bulls sit in this place where they're not really moving forward. We're taking steps back every single year. And yeah, we have bright spots like Modest Vucevic. Great. I love Modest. And I do think Modest has the potential to be a star in this league. I really do think that. I'm not saying he's going to hit that, but I do think he has the potential to do that. We have Ayo, such a good dog player that we just love, and it's the type of player now that's going to have the identity of Chicago on him, right? But you still need more than that. You still need a base. You still need a lot more, and the Bulls are a very far off way from being a very far off way, at least in my opinion. You guys can let me know what you guys think on all that down below. Now, with that said, we did get more news, this one coming from Mark Stein, that the Suns' interest in Nikola Vucevic is real. And, saying that the Suns have their sights set on Nikola Vucevic, but they want to offer Jonas Valanciunas for it, and Nurkic for it, Yusuf Nurkic, and unfortunately, it's just not going to get done. With the Suns being a second tax apron team, right, and let this be a lesson to why you want to avoid the second tax apron. The Suns sit in a place where they cannot aggregate salaries, meaning they can't combine multiple salaries to make a move for Nikola Vucevic, who has a $20 million contract. So you're looking at, even with Nurkic being the one player that that's $18 million. It gets you a close way there. And if they weren't in that second tax apron, they can combine a vet minimum contract or something to get it done. But unfortunately, because they sit in that second tax apron, they cannot aggregate salary. So while the Suns' interest, and they're interested reportedly via Mark Stein to give up a first-round pick and Nurkic to get it done, unfortunately, it looks like that's just not going to be so. This is not a deal that's realistically able to happen because the Suns sit right now at $31 million above the second tax apron. So they cannot aggregate salaries. And if you look at it, the only yeah, they have Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant, but unfortunately, those salaries are way too high, and they're not going to trade any of those players for Nikola Vucevic. So this is a lesson of why teams monitor and how teams monitor the salary cap is so important, because now the Suns sit in a place where they probably would have a package that the Bulls would be interested in. Nurkic is a center. His contract runs the same amount of time as Nikola Vucevic's contract, so no harm, no foul there. It's actually a little bit less. They have a first-round pick that they can trade in 2026, I believe is when they could trade that pick. But they can't do that because, again, they can't aggregate salaries, right? So they would be able to theoretically, and I was wrong. Looks like they can't trade a first-round pick due to the Stepien rule until 2031. So that would be kind of a far way off to push that pick. But you can't get a deal done because of the second tax apron. And so while the Suns' interest is being reported by Mark Stein and others, of course, have picked it up and talked about it, there's no feasible way for the Suns to get this deal done. It's just not. And that is, the Suns are going to be a huge lesson on why the second tax apron is something that a lot of teams are going to want to avoid by any means necessary, because you just cannot at all really the limited mobility you have once you reach that second tax apron is damning. You better be damn well believe in the roster that you have once you hit that second tax apron, because it's going to be very hard for you to come off of it after that point. And that's where the Bulls sit right now. And where the Suns sit right now. Yeah, they have contracts they can move. They can move Grayson Allen. They can even move Nurkic. But if their target was a Nikola Vucevic, they can't. And they're going to have to, any deals that they make, it's going to have to come down to, they're going to have to match the money damn near exactly. And we know how hard that can be in the NBA. And so it's going to be funny to see what the Suns do at this trade deadline. It's going to be really, because Suns are a team that want to make a move, and they have assets to make a move, but they probably just aren't going to be able to make a move due to the salary cap restrictions. And that is the dangers of the second tax apron. And the Suns are going to be one of those teams that everybody has to look at and say, hey, you remember the Suns? That's why you don't want to get to the second tax apron. So it's going to be, the teams are going to avoid the second tax apron by all costs. And, it's not really a conversation about the Bulls, because the Bulls really aren't never going to be there. Hell, we're never going to go over the first tax apron. But we'll see what happens there. I think ultimately it just comes down to this. The Bulls have assets that I think teams are going to want leading into the trade deadline. The question is that are teams going to be willing to offer what the Bulls want back for that? And it's a team like the Suns seem like they were willing, but they're just not able to. Which kind of sucks in a way, but we'll see what develops there. Last topic before we get out of here today, though, is that the Bulls are dealing with like a sickness in the illness, to say, in the locker room. And that's why you saw players like Ayo Dosunmu and Lonzo out. And even though Ayo was also listed as an Achilles type thing, sprain type thing, I think the illness is more so what took him out. And the sickness is going through, the bug that's going through the Bulls locker room. It sucks because it's coming at a time where the Bulls face off against the Milwaukee Bucks at home on Saturday. And this is a Bucks team that just beat you without Dame and without Giannis. And they cannot be taken lightly at all, right? The Milwaukee Bucks has very much so turned their season around as well. Shout out to the Bucks for doing that. They did lose to the Brooklyn Nets yesterday, though, which is crazy. That, the Bulls, lost to them. They lost to the Brooklyn Nets. It is what it is, right? It just sucks. But this is a period of time where the Bulls could very well start falling back to more where some of the preseason predictions had the Bulls falling at. And that meaning so that the Bulls just aren't going to it could start falling here. And I know that the Bulls have the second easiest schedule according to Tankathon and strength of schedule and all that type of stuff, but this is the Chicago Bulls. And while they are hoping to get Josh Giddey back, right? And, we even heard that, Josh Giddey's the ankle thing is starting to kind of heal up a little bit some. Billy Donovan saying this. I wouldn't say it's a long shot, but it's a lot going on to depend on how he responds off Thursday workout and then probably get another one on Friday. That will probably be a good tell on if he's available on Saturday. That's for Josh Giddey. And we'll see what happens with Giddey. We'll see if Josh Giddey can get back to being on the court for the Bulls. But the Bulls want everybody back as soon as possible. And this isn't about trades or anything like that. This is just to see what they have. This roster is still in an evaluation period. And you want to evaluate all the talent you have because you have a couple of deadlines that are coming up that you're going to have to make some tough decisions. The trade deadline, we'll see what the Bulls do, if anything. But then even going into free agency, we'll see what the Chicago Bulls do because there could be a lot of things that change with this team then, if not at the trade deadline. This is still a team that doesn't have a clear direction. And, yeah, the roster's not final, but you still want to find that direction to get you to the place of where your path's going to be. And so in that, they're still trying to evaluate a lot of things. So getting Giddey back, getting Io back, Modest Bucelis, who was out with that illness as well, getting him back to continue his development and him being a part of this rotation is going to be important for the Bulls. And we'll see how they develop that and how they get on that pace. We got a game tomorrow night. The drip's going to be crazy. We're going to be live. It's City Edition night, so bring out your City Edition gear. But that's my time for today. Love you guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.